You're live on Newsroom Africa, Channel 405. We continue the special dialogue then tonight that's been brought to us by the Soul City Institute for Social Justice. Of course, we're discussing the issue of gender-based violence. It's on the eve of that well-known campaign of 16 days, as it's come to be known. And for this segment, then, we're going to be exploring the impact of gender-based violence, especially on minority groups, and also taking a look at some of the technology that has been developed to try and help and assist in the fight against gender-based violence. My studio panelists for now, of course, our studio audience remains, and we'll still be hearing more from them then tonight. Joined by Joanna van Wyk from Sage SA, Yolisa Kani from Uber SA, and Jenna Bayes, she's a clinical psychologist. But before we get then into the conversation, there are women who are often excluded from a significant part of the conversation that we have, and these are especially women who are living with disability.
I'm Zimbabwean by nationality, so I migrated into this country from Zim in 2006. So while coming from work, we used to hitchhike because we used to knock off at around 2 a.m. in the morning. So just like many other companies here in South Africa, they don't care about women or their safety. We used to be on our own when it comes to e-transport. When we were hitchhiking, unfortunately we hitchhiked in Motero or Yangat, so that wasn't my day. So with everything that they were asking for from us, I used to be the slowest one, you know. Produce your phones, give us your phones and stuff. Because being shock and everything. So when they took it that I'm being naive or I'm being uncooperative. I was getting raped by 4 guys. Then they threw me back inside the car. Then they drove off with me. So inside the car, should we kill her or and then they started fighting amongst themselves. So while they were doing so, the 5th guy to rape me inside the car. And then when he was done with me, and then he threw me out of a moving car. Then I was taken to the hospital because Mvugeksen is in hospital. And I remember the first thing, one of my sisters, the first thing that they said to me was, when I it is one to go again. When I and then they started asking me, why is Elana South Africa why they come here to cause trouble, and there are no migrant-friendly facilities in police stations and in hospitals. I believe, like in most public institutions, it's rare to find an official, or let me say hospital staff, who has migrants at heart. There are no interpreters, there are no migrant-friendly resources in police stations. They do not have interpreters, and some of them do not even have migrants at heart, like they do not care. The moment that they see that you cannot speak in any South African language, or your accent shows that you're from another country, then there is a no for them. Like they can scrape off your case and not even do you follow up.
We women with disabilities, most of the times we are forgotten. They don't talk about us, they don't talk about our struggles as women with disability. And even now, I'm here to raise the issue, to say, hey women, we are here as women with disability.
And of course, the first insert that you saw there was from a migrant woman who, as you heard, there was brutally gang raped and left for dead, literally, and surviving under very trying circumstances. And as we have these conversations, of course, there are those who are often excluded from the conversation. And the reason I'll say that is because if we are to be intentional about the kind of solutions that are needed, then we have to be aware of where exactly the shortfalls in the system are currently to ensure that whatever solution solutions we have are appropriate and really are inclusive of everyone and not just fully abled bodies. So to then kick us off in this part of the conversation, Jenna, I'm going to begin with you as a cross woman. I want you to speak to us about the kind of impact that you see where gender-based violence is concerned. For the longest time in South Africa, we had multiple stories that I remember a period where violence against the LGBTIQ plus community were making headlines. That seems to have subsided. Does it mean that the violence has stopped?
No, violence hasn't stopped, because as long as you harbor a homophobic mindset, the violence won't stop. From my perspective, I've grown up a white male, which means my skin color wasn't an obstacle and my gender wasn't an obstacle. So, of course, when I came out as a transgender woman, the game has changed, of course. So when I go on Facebook, only being on Facebook a week, I was getting men sending me pictures of their private parts, which is, of course, sexual harassment, and then saying to me, why don't you video call a week, versus women who've experienced this their whole life. So that really sort of gave me a wake-up call. And then, of course, lesbians who experience corrective rape. In other words, men raping women to correct them, i.e. trying to make them straight, which is rape and homophobia as well. So it's still very common.
Sure. And I imagine that for countries patriarchal as we are, Zesleb, I know you said not to bring you in, but part of these attitudes perpetuate themselves in especially how these minority groups then become treated, and the violence is almost exacerbated against them.
Yes, and I also want to speak about violence that is not so obvious, because the violence that is obvious is the corrective rape. What about the violence in churches, where people are in churches and they cannot come out? What about the violence that is in homes, where people deny people's existence? So we often concentrate, and rightfully so, on the violent act, that you could be raped and you could be refused treatment. Yeah. But we also harbor a lot of attitudes where we can use culture and religion to justify how we treat, different people who do not look like us. And therefore, it goes back to what we spoke about earlier, that all of us need to reflect. I often say to people, you do not have to be gay, you do not have to be trans, you do not have to be a lesbian or in any other form. But the fact that you think that because you have a particular sexual orientation or you identify yourself does not give you the right to then even think of harming somebody else because you do not believe in something. But we've got so many attitudes and so many institutions like the church that basically perpetuate this violence. And we will not be able to stop corrective rape if we don't stop the kind of other violence that people experience that we don't even sometimes recognize as violence.
Sure. I'm going to come to our other panelists in a moment, but I want to take this conversation back to the floor. Of course, there was a lady who had her hand up earlier, and I especially want to bring you in for this part of the conversation.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Cathy Mohlahlana. I'm from Disabled Women South Africa and Black Women Caucus. My thing is, can we, as we start the 16 days of activism, let's not forget, as much as we are a minority, also go through these problems. And they go through them most of the time alone, because there's no one who's at their corner and looking after them. And even if you go and you report the situation in social workers or police stations, you are an afterthought, you are not taken care of. Like, you don't get prioritized, because from back, it starts at the back where you're not even, how are you actually abused? Because as a disabled person, you're not even supposed to be in relationships or things like that. But above and beyond that, I'm going to come back to what the panel was saying before about not telling girls to sit properly and stuff. As much as we tell our kids to not play around hot stoves or to look left and right before they cross the road, we are in a crisis as this country. So we are supposed to tell our children to be careful. We are supposed to teach them how to sit. We are supposed to teach them how they are supposed to trust. Because as we can see, the men of this country do not respect us or love us enough to know that they are not supposed to touch us in a certain way. We have to now, above and beyond that, we have to come back and teach these boys, teach these men and grandfathers and uncles and our boyfriends how to treat us. men of this country do not know what is wrong and what is right. Hence, they would say, she cannot say I raped her, she spent the whole night in my house. She cannot say I raped her, she's my girlfriend, or no, she's disabled. How can I rape a disabled person? Yes, we are sexual beings, we get raped all the time. So let's teach these men and these boys how to treat us, how to respect us, and let's teach our girls, more importantly, how to protect themselves against this nation of men who are so patriarchal.
All right. Thank you so much for that contribution. On that note, we're going to take a final break then tonight. We'll continue our conversation in a moment, and we'll take a look also at the role of technology in the fight against gender-based violence. This is Newsroom Africa.